bring a blanket.
I brought a really thick sweater today, but then I was like, wow, I don't need it.
Of course.
Maybe later.
Well, I have a heated blanket in my office. It's just sitting there and you can bring it in to get cold.
I need to get one.
I broke down and
Yeah, 'cause downstairs it gets cold sometimes too.
Okay,
freezing.
Mr. Cliff, you can go ahead. Sorry. I was thinking about talking to three people at the same time. That's why I don't normally call you Mr. Moody, but Cliff, go ahead and let the public in. And is our witness close by? Okay, great. I figured as much, but just needed to confirm, so. Yeah, why don't you go ahead? Then we'll just have her on the witness stand when we start, so. Yeah, but let's wait till we get the witness on the stand and, hey, Mackenzie. Tuesday's fine, I think. I'm supposed to be part of a Justice Advisory Board meeting, but I will let them know that I will probably need to be in and out of that. There's somebody else that can actually run the meeting if he's available, so.
What time is it?
It starts it's at 10 till noon.
Okay.
But can only do so much.
Yeah, okay.
Run ourselves pretty thin sometimes. Gee, many Christmas. Okay.
Yeah, I can try. And I told both of them, and Judge Scott, because I do. Hold on.
I think we're here. I think we're all ready to go.
We'll bring the jurors in and then you can have a seat. Have a seat.
I'm gonna have the jury brought in. So. Everyone may be seated. All right, and we're ready to continue with the direct examination of the witness.
Thank you.
Make sure if you need to have your microphones on too as well, folks. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, Ms. McNeil.
Good morning.
So where we left off yesterday afternoon, we were to the point of discussing your documentation of the outside of the apartment complex at 414 11th Street. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And as I understand it, this part of your involvement with the investigation would have taken place before you documented the execution of the search warrant. Is that right?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. McNeil, I'm gonna hand you State's Exhibits 39 through 44 photographs. Would you identify those photographs, please?
Yes, these are the photos I took outside the apartment complex in a parking area. Yes. Yes.
David offers State's Exhibits 39 through 44.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
39 through 44 are each admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, Ms. McNeil, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 39. Can you explain to the jury kind of the vantage point that we have here and what we're looking at with this particular photograph?
This photo was taken in the parking area where you can see several areas of importance. Evidence markers A through D have various pools of red stains, which were presumed blood at the time, as well as a black stocking cap. E, F, and G are a mitten and 2 face masks. This was taken that night while the victim was in the hospital.
And the perspective at which we're looking, which direction are we looking at? If we're looking into the photo, do you know which direction we're facing here?
Not which direction, however, it is from the vantage point of the driveway from the street into the parking area.
State's Exhibit number 40. State's Exhibit number 40 documents placard A with what appears to be blood. Is that right, Ms. McNeil?
Yes.
So just to give some perspective, we go back to State's Exhibit number 39. The 39 would show that placard A is right there. Is that right, Ms. McNeil?
Yes.
And so State's Exhibit number 40 then that is your close-up vantage point of that particular placard.
Yes.
Now, there was some testimony yesterday that placard A, a swab of placard A was sent to the lab for testing. Is this what we're referring to with that report in which placard A was tested or swabbed placard A?
Yes, it is.
And so did you take that swab of
Yes.
this substance in the snow here?
Yes, I did.
State's Exhibit number 41. Is State's Exhibit number 41 that same spot of blood out in the back part of that apartment building?
Yes, it is.
It just does not have the placard.
Correct.
State's Exhibit number 42. Another vantage point that we see of placards A, B, C, and D. Now placards C and D, what are you documenting with those 2 placards?
C and D are small areas with red stains that were presumed to be blood. and they head towards the direction of the driveway into the parking lot.
State's exhibit number 43, just another perspective of those same 4 placards. Is that right, Ms. McNeil?
Yes, it is.
And then state's exhibit number 44, a vantage point of the other placards, E, F, and G. Now, you indicated that E, F, and G are documented there. Were those items collected as part of what you were doing with this investigation?
Yes, they were.
Were those sent in for testing?
I am not sure. I cannot say.
If the lab report reflects that none of those items were sent, would you agree with that?
Yes.
Now, you indicated, Ms. McNeil, that part of your effort initially was to go to the hospital and document Mr. Harlan, but you were unable to do so. At some point in time when you were at the hospital, were the clothes of Mr. Harlan seized as part of the investigation into this case?
Yes, they were.
And so those items were collected and were they taken back to the police department?
Yes, they were.
And were those items documented?
Yes.
And did you document those items by photograph?
Yes.
Ms. McNeil, I'm going to hand you another set of photographs, states exhibits 86 through 93. You recognize those photographs?
Yes, I do.
And are those photographs that document William Harlan?
Yes, they are.
State would offer states exhibits 86 through 93.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
86 through 93 inclusive are admitted.
Showing you states exhibit number 86. Ms. McNeil, what is being documented here in states exhibit number 86?
These are the clothing of the victim, primarily a t-shirt and his outer jacket that he was wearing at the time.
Now, just generally, what were the condition of his clothes in terms of the substance that appears to be on these clothes?
There is an apparent red stain on the shirt, which was surmised to be blood, as well as smaller stains on the outer jacket.
States exhibit number 87, where are you documenting here in states exhibit number 87?
I have documented 3 large cuts to the outer jacket.
And is that what you're noting there with the little next to those cuts that we see in the fabric of the jacket?
Yes.
And I know it's a little hard to see, but I look at one cut there. Is that right, Ms. McNeil?
Yes.
Second cut there,
Yes.
and then a third cut right here on the jacket.
Yes.
States exhibit number 88. That's just a close-up of that third cut that I just referenced in State's Exhibit number 87. Is that right, Ms. McNeil?
Yes, that's correct.
State's Exhibit number 89. Mr. Harlan's T-shirt. Again, it appears a good portion of this T-shirt was soaked with blood. Is that right, Ms. McNeil?
Yes,
And that was your observation as well when you handled the shirt?
yes,
Now, presumably you laid the shirt out to take this particular photograph.
yes, I did.
Now, the paramedics had indicated that they had cut up the clothing of Mr. Harlan. Now, this particular shirt, when it was photographed, was it folded back together to show the two halves that had been put back together of the T-shirt?
Yes, they were.
Now, in State's Exhibit number 90. Another photograph of the T-shirt of Mr. Harlan. Your documentation here with the rulers or the little rulers of the shirt, Ms. McNeil, again, are you documenting cut marks in Mr. Harlan's T-shirt?
Yes, I am.
One up here. One down here. One over here. Is
Yes,
that right, Ms. McNeil?
yes, that's correct.
Now, the way that this shirt is kind of sitting on the ground with this particular mark here on the shirt, if it was being worn lying more up along the armpit area of Mr. Harlan.
Yes, it would be.
Now, State's Exhibit number 91. What is shown here in State's Exhibit number 91, Mr. McNeil?
This is another portion of the victim's clothing that was between the layers of the outer jacket and T-shirt. This is showing more stab wounds that correlate to the other clothing.
So then the T-shirt was the garment closest to Mr. Harlan's skin.
Yes, it was.
This, I guess I would call it a gray insulated kind of shirt was over the top.
Yes, it was.
And then his winter jacket was over the top of that.
Yes,
So Mr. Harlan was wearing 3 layers of clothing that particular night. Again, Ms. McNeil, your observations of this particular item of clothing, was it consistent with your observation of the T-shirt and that the left side of the clothing was soaked with blood?
yes,
State's Exhibit number 92, that same gray insulated sweatshirt. At this point, are you documenting those same cuts in the fabric of the shirt with the little rulers that we see?
yes,
You've got one documented up here, 2 in this area, and then 1 over here.
yes,
And then State's Exhibit number 93. A close-up of those same markings that we see in State's Exhibit number 92.
yes,
Ms. McNeil, I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit number 28. Why don't you slide your chair back just for a moment? Give yourself some room. You recognize State's Exhibit number 20?
Yes, I do.
And is that Mr. Harlan's jacket that we saw in the photographs?
Yes, it is.
The state would offer State's Exhibit number 28.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
28 is admitted.
And then I'm also going to hand you or show you State's Exhibit number 30 and State's Exhibit number 29. Do you recognize those clothing items as well?
Yes, I do.
And State's Exhibit 30, is that the T-shirt of Mr. Harlan?
Yes, it is.
And State's Exhibit number 29, is that the kind of gray insulated shirt that Mr. Harlan was wearing?
Yes, it is.
State would offer State's Exhibits 29 and 30.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
29 and 30 are admitted.
And so in State's Exhibit number 29, Ms. McNeil, the cutting that we see up through the gray insulated sweatshirt or shirt of Mr. Harlan, that cutting, was that done through by the paramedics that we talked about earlier?
Yes, it was.
And then the same for the T-shirt that we see cut up through the center of his T-shirt, that would have been done by the paramedics for purposes of treatment.
Yes.
Now in State's Exhibit number 28. Again, the cutting of this particular coat, Mr. Harlan's coat, up through the center portion of his jacket, that would also been done by the paramedics for purposes of treatment.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil. The state has no further questions of this witness at this time.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. McNeil, you said you went to the hospital. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you went there twice?
Yes.
Okay. The first time, what time did you go to the hospital?
It was approximately 10:30. I don't have the exact time.
Okay. And at 10:30, they were still working on Mr. Harlan.
Yes.
Now, I believe you said you took some photographs of the defendant.
Yes, I did.
Okay, who was with you when you took those photographs?
It would have been detectives involved with the case.
Okay, you don't happen to recall which detective it was?
No, I do not.
If I said it might have been Detective West, would that refresh your recollection?
I would say that's correct.
All right, and so you testified about taking pictures of the hands of Mr. Parker. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And one of those hands, you saw some blood or what you believe was blood.
yes, that's correct.
Okay. Which hand was that?
I believe it was the left hand.
Okay. So in your experience, have you ever seen people, a two-person carry, someone carrying someone by the shoulders and someone carrying them by their legs?
I have seen that before.
Okay. So if someone was to be behind a person and carrying them from their head side, would their left wrist be in the person they're carrying's left armpit?
Possibly, yes.
Would that make sense?
Yes, it would.
Now, you said sometimes when you're taking pictures, it doesn't really catch what you're trying to take a picture of.
That's correct.
Like when you were taking a picture of the front of Mr. Harlan's jacket, you said it was, I believe your testimony was, it's kind of hard to photograph the cuts.
It was a bit because the clothes were wrinkled and some of it was cut.
Okay. All right. But you believe there were 4 cuts in that top coat.
Yes,
Now, did you also have a little trouble when you were at the car, when you were trying to photograph what you thought might be some blood stain?
yes,
Okay, so that photograph of the kind of the doorway of the Murano, you had a little trouble being able to show exactly what you were looking for.
that's correct.
Okay, so pictures don't always show the whole scene or what actually happened.
Yes, that's true.
Now you yourself were personally in that back seat.
Yes, I was.
Now, did you ever find out what the results were of any of the swabs or things that you took that you collected as evidence? Did you ever find out the results of any of those?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So are you aware of the results of the brown stain in the back of the car?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So and what was the result of that brown stain in the back seat of that car?
The result was that I believe it was not blood.
So nowhere in that back seat was there blood of any type.
That's correct.
Not a speck, not a dribble, not a drop.
There was a drop in the frame of the vehicle, but not on the seats themselves.
So again, in the seat,
That's true.
none. Okay. Was there any cast off on the roof?
No,
Any blood anywhere other than a handprint and a couple little specks there on the floor?
that's true.
And you had all the time you needed to look, to photograph, whatever you needed. Did you have that available?
That's true. Yes.
Was the driver of the vehicle still there when you were taking pictures?
I do not know that. If he was, he would have been in a police vehicle and I don't have access to those.
Okay, so you just didn't see them.
Correct.
Now, going back to the photographs that you took on the outside of the apartment. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We've seen some of those. Was there artificial light added to that scene?
There were flashlights for myself and other officers.
Okay, so it was much darker in reality, before the pictures were taken.
Yes,
Okay, so if people had been standing out there, they would not have had the lights to be able to see the things that you saw.
they might have with street lights, but it would have been very dark.
Okay. All right. And the larger pool of blood or whatever the substance was at marker A. By the time you got there, that was frozen.
I can't say. The shallower parts would have been, but the deeper part still looked relatively wet.
And is that where you collected your sample from?
Yes.
That's it. I don't think I have any more questions for you.
Okay, Mr. Loomis, any follow-up or redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. You're excused. Mr. Loomis, you have additional evidence?
I do. The state calls Officer Nathan Neas.
Okay. Right. Nice ring. I gotta figure out how to get that one on mine. Come on in and have a seat if you would, and adjust your chair and the microphone, and then I'll place you under oath after we've got that. Good, all right. Just have you raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in this matter?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Loomis, when you're ready, of course, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I will ask you, go ahead and state your full name.
Nathan Neas.
Thank you.
Last name is Niehus.
Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury where you're employed
I'm at Sioux City Police Department.
and how long have you been an officer with the Sioux City Police Department?
I've been an officer for 9 years, doing various different positions, including uniform patrol, special investigations unit, and currently assigned to crimes against persons unit.
Are you a certified peace officer here in the state of Iowa?
Yes, I am.
Now, your current assignment with the police department in the investigations unit or division, when did you start that?
December of last year.
Were you called in to assist with the investigation into the stabbing of William Harlan on February 24th, 2023?
Yes, I was.
And how is it that you became aware of that particular stabbing that night?
I was called from my residence by my sergeant approximately 10 o'clock that evening to come in and investigate stabbing that had taken place.
Were you and other officers within the investigations division called in?
Yes, we were.
And at that point in time, when you get called in, are you given any information? Or are you aware of anything that has taken place at that point in time?
The original information that we received was that there was an individual that had been stabbed. We were called to 414 11th Street. I should say patrol was called to the scene there at 414 11th Street. There was individuals that were there on scene, 3 specifically. And we had some video footage that from the apartment complex of where we were called to.
So Do you remember about what time it was that you were called in?
Approximately 10 PM, I believe.
And when you get called in for a situation such as this, where do you respond? Where do you go?
Typically, we initially respond to the police department to gather information from the patrol officers that are originally on scene or supervisors that were on scene and go from there. Break out at that point, depending on the detective, going to different places such as hospital scene and conduct interviews, etc.
So is it fair to say, and did you do so on this night, that you responded to the police station first?
Yes, that's correct.
And then based on what you just mentioned, officers, fair to say that you meet together as a group and try and formulate a plan moving forward on how the investigation is going to go from what you have?
Yes, that's correct.
And so when you arrived at the station back on February 24th, are there individuals at the station to be interviewed?
Yes, there was 3 individuals that were there.
And were those individuals, as you understood it, on the scene at 414 11th Street?
Yes.
And those individuals were who?
Those individuals were Nathaniel Parker Jr., Nathaniel Parker III, and Jeffrey Lee.
Now, Nathaniel Parker Jr., what's his relationship to Nathaniel Parker III?
Nathaniel Parker Jr. we find out he is the individual who rents that specific apartment. He's actually the person that calls. He is the father to Nathaniel Parker III.
Now, could you help the jury understand, Officer Neas, when you have an investigation that begins like this, you indicated that you and the other officers within the investigations division get together, kind of have a discussion to formulate some kind of plan moving forward about how the investigation is going to go. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct.
And so give the jury a sense of what it is that you're trying to do when an investigation like this one initiates. What is kind of the overall approach to an investigation as it begins?
So the overall approach is to gather as much information that we can to get to the bottom of what happened. And ultimately, the goal is to collect all the facts that we know and get to the truth.
Now, in these situations, in these types of investigations that are undertaken, you indicated that the effort is to gather and collect as much information as you can. Does that information gathering process continue throughout the course of your investigation? 1. And 2, do you want as much information as you can before you go and start talking to individuals that might have some involvement with what happened?
Yes, we are constantly collecting information throughout the whole investigation, and not just that evening, but ongoing forward. And to answer your second part of the question, yes, I always want to know everything I know before going into specifically an interview or going forward, talking to people. I want to know everything that we know at the time, whether it's comes in from patrol officers or supervisors on scene, medics on scene, other detectives that are assisting in the investigation.
And what's the reason that you want to know as much information as you can have that's available at that time before you begin talking with any people that might be involved?
Knowing everything that we know, we can go in and when it comes to an interview, we can talk to individuals and know whether they're being truthful or not. Know that what they're saying is consistent with what we are seeing, for example, on video, and making sure everything's consistent and we have facts, and again, to get to the truth.
So, Officer Neas, in this particular situation, when you arrive at the station, you indicated that there's 3 individuals there, Nathaniel Parker Jr., Nathaniel Parker III, and Jeffrey Lee. Now, the information that you get before you go in and begin to speak with these individuals, what information do you have available to you at that point in time that you know of before interviews begin?
At the time, we had patrol officers that originally were on scene, had briefly spoke to individuals there, which were the same individuals that we had in interview rooms. We had information about the victim and his stab wounds. We also had short clips of video surveillance from the apartment complex. When I say short clips, I mean we had small clips at the time. We were able to go back and get full length clips from the apartment complex.
And did you have the 911 call available at that time?
That's correct. We did have the 911 calls available as well.
And it's my understanding, officer, that the 911 call came in at 9:47 p.m. Is that right?
Yes,
And I believe you indicated earlier that the person making that particular phone call was Nathaniel Parker Jr.
yes, we did know that Nathaniel Parker Jr. made the 911 call to his own apartment.
And officers had responded, and you had the information from the patrol officers, at least what they had gathered up to that point. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you had some video surveillance clips of the area of the apartment. Is that fair? 414 11th Street?
Yes, we had clips from inside and outside of that apartment of 414 11th Street.
Now, did you have an opportunity to review those particular clips?
Yes, I have.
Did you have an opportunity to review those clips prior to beginning any interviews of the persons that were at the station?
During the course of interviews, yes, prior to that, we had seen them prior to talking to individuals.
And upon your review of those particular clips, what do you recall having at your disposal at that point in time? Or what do you remember about those clips at that point in time?
Originally, we knew that there was 5 individuals in a vehicle, which would be described as a white, smaller SUV, later determined to be a white Nissan Murano, that had pulled in the back parking lot of 414 11th Street. These 4 individuals ended up ultimately getting out of the vehicle. I say 4 because there was a 5th person that was still in the vehicle, which was later identified as the victim. The backseat passenger on the driver's side and the backseat passenger on the passenger side both exited the vehicle. The backseat passenger on the driver's side walked around to the backseat passenger driver's side, backseat passenger on the passenger side. So he walks around the backside of the vehicle, grabs an individual from inside the vehicle, picks him up, carries him approximately 10 feet to 15 feet, and violently throws him to the ground. At that point, there appears to be some sort of verbal altercation between the 2 backseat passengers. Those 2 individuals have some sort of verbal altercation. We can see on video, but not hear any audio. Those individuals then pick up the individual that was on the ground, which would be the victim, carry him around the building into the front of the building. They are led by a front seat passenger who is identified as Nathaniel Parker Jr. He unlocks the door. They enter the stairway, go downstairs. They carry the victim into apartment number 6, which is Nathaniel Parker Jr.'s apartment. And at that point, that was the video we had seen up to this point.
Now, the individuals that you're referring to, we're going to come back and identify those when we watch the video surveillance themselves. But the initial video clips that you would have seen, was there any indication or did you see any indication of any weapons on any of the persons?
Yes. In the back parking lot, there was a glimmer of light coming from who we know now to be the defendant, his front right pocket area. Also in the stairway, you can see that same, which appears to be a sharp edged weapon sticking out of his pocket. And in our bottom floor hallway, again, you can see that same sharp edged weapon sticking out of his front right pocket of his coat.
So with that information available to you, is that what you have then as you go into the interview process of the people that were at the station?
Yes, use that information as tools in investigating while we were doing interviews with the individuals that were at the station.
Now, at that point in time, did you know Mr. Harlan's condition?
At some point, we learned he was deceased. I don't know if it was prior to starting the interviews or during the interviews.
At a minimum, you knew that Mr. Harlan had been transported away from the scene and was at the hospital.
Yes, we knew he had significant injuries, was unresponsive on scene, and had been transported to the hospital.
Now, the information that you had initially obtained from those video clips, you indicated that it was a white, smaller SUV that was seen pulling into the back part of the apartment. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you indicated that you were later able to identify that vehicle as a white Nissan Murano.
That's correct.
Now, during the course of time, was that particular vehicle located that night during the investigation?
Yes, the vehicle was located. I was able to collect still shots of the short clips that we had of the driver of the vehicle as well as the vehicle from those same video clips that I described earlier. Those still shots were sent out to Uniform Patrol as well as Sioux City Police Department, as well as Woodbury County Sheriff's Office patrol officers. And that evening, I was advised during interviews that the vehicle and the driver had both been located.
And the driver of that particular vehicle was who?
The driver of that vehicle was Conway Malone.
And was he also then transported to the station?
Yes, he was.
So there are 4 individuals at the station for interviews.
That's correct.
Who is it that you first began to speak with as part of your investigation into what happened on February 24th?
I spoke with Jeffrey Lee.
And how long do you think that you spoke with Jeffrey Lee that particular night?
For a very lengthy period of time. I had gone in and out of the interview room at different times, but for hours we had spoke.
Was your interview of Jeffrey Lee productive in the sense of being able to obtain information that furthered your investigation?
Yes, it was.
Did the information obtained from Mr. Lee corroborate things that you had already gathered or seen as part of the investigation?
Yes, it had corroborated things that we had already seen, and it also provided new information that we were able to corroborate later.
Was he fully cooperative initially with you in the investigation in terms of his discussion with you?
He was not fully cooperative. He minimized and left things out.
In your experience, is that unusual for that to happen?
No, not at all.
Did he continue to gather, or did he continue to provide you more information as you continue to speak with him?
Yes, he had.
And that information, as it continues to come out from him, you and the other officers involved are able to corroborate what he's telling you?
Yes, we were.
And that corroboration comes through other sources of information?
Other sources of information, and as well as video evidence.
Now, in terms of the video evidence that you were able to obtain as part of your investigation, did you gather more video surveillance from the area of the apartment?
Yes.
Okay. Did you gather any other video surveillance?
Yes, during the course of our investigation, we knew that the individuals involved had gone to Select Mart on 14th Street. I was able to gather that video footage from inside the store. They did not have any exterior cameras. I was also able to gather video footage from Delperdang Accounting, what is right next door, across just west of the Select Mart on the west side of the alley. which had very good exterior cameras showing all the way around their building, to include Select Mart's outside lot.
And so you had three sources of video surveillance from the apartment complex area, the Select Mart, and Delperdana County.
Correct.
The video surveillance, did that help you identify the different people that you see on the video surveillance?
Yes, I was able to identify all the individuals that were involved in each specific video footage.
And did that video surveillance help you put together a timeline of events that occurred that particular night?
Yes, it did.
That particular timeline, were you able to kind of not only put together the events that transpired, but times of when certain events would have happened that particular night?
Yes, that's correct.
And that information was able to be compiled into a document?
Yes,
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Officer Neary, I'm going to hand you what we marked as State's Exhibit number 94. You recognize State's Exhibit number 94?
yes, I do.
And what is State's Exhibit 94?
This is a documentation of a timeline of events to include location as well as the source of the video that we had collected.
Now, the video that you collected, there's hours of video. Is that right?
Yes,
Officer Neary?
yes, that's correct.
And as part of your investigation, did you go through all of that video?
Yes, I had.
And you're going through all that video to try and locate the different parties that are involved and to try and determine what happened that particular night.
That's correct.
And State's Exhibit 94 that you just took a look at, is that an effort to kind of summarize what you had observed or seen over all those sources of video surveillance?
Yeah, it's an accurate summarization of multiple sources of video and multiple timeframes to kind of compile it together to make it make sense.
Because there's certain clips that show certain things and then other clips would show other things. And so you're matching those things together to put this all in kind of one continuous line of action. Is that fair?
Yes.
The state would offer State's Exhibit 94 into evidence.
Any objection to 94?
No objection.
94 is admitted.
Now, Officer Neary, after you were able to speak with individuals, collect the information that you did from the video surveillance, were you able to come to an understanding then of the events that would have taken place back on the night of February 24th of 2023, when William Harlan was stabbed?
Yes, I was.
Can you give the jury kind of a summary of this timeline of events as you were able to gather it and put it together from that particular night?
Yes. Is it going to show up here?
I'm going to use that in just a moment.
Okay.
If you could just give kind of an outline for me, Officer Neary,
Okay.
of what would have happened or what you were able to gather and put together from that particular night.
Okay. So originally, the defendant's father, who is Nathaniel Parker Jr., Jeffrey Lee, got in a vehicle with Conway Malone, left 414 11th Street. A short time later, that same vehicle arrived at the Select Mart on 14th and Jackson. The vehicle pulled in to the gas pump area. One individual got out, and you can see him going into the store. This is Jeffrey Lee. Jeffrey Lee goes into the store and purchases some gasoline. While he's in the store, the vehicle, the white Nissan Murano, which Conway Malone is driving, turns around to get gas, repositions the vehicle. At that point, the victim approaches the driver's side of the passenger side of the vehicle, speaks to somebody in the vehicle. The victim then goes inside Select Mart, purchases some alcohol. Jeffrey Lee exits Select Mart, gets in the back seat of the vehicle. The victim then exits Select Mart and goes towards the vehicle. Jeffrey Lee gets out. Victim gets in, placing him in the middle of the back seat of the vehicle. The vehicle then leaves and travels westbound on 14th, northbound on Nebraska. And then a short time later, the vehicle is seen again back westbound on 14th Street, southbound on Pierce. The vehicle then enters the back of 414 11th Street. Those four parties get out as I described earlier. The defendant picks up the victim, throws him to the ground. The defendant and Jeffrey Lee carry the victim inside. And then at that point, we see Nathaniel Parker Jr. go to let in officers, and we see officers enter. And that marries up with our body camera footage that we have our patrol officers are wearing.
And we'll get into that in a little more detail, Officer Diaz, but I think it would be helpful for us to understand kind of where things are. The different businesses that are involved, the different locations that are involved. This is going to be tight quarters at your office. Officer Nias, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 2. What is State's Exhibit number 2?
There's a map of the area, including all of the locations that I've just previously mentioned.
The state would offer State's Exhibit number 2 in evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Two is admitted.
All right, we're going to see if we have enough room here.
And Mr. Loomis, feel free I don't know if you have room, but you can come out here and I'm not worried about seeing it as long as council can, so.
Well, as long as no one comes in and knocks us over, we'll be in good shape.
Oh, let's see.
Okay, so you have State's Exhibit number 2. It's a map of the area, kind of the different locations that we're talking about. Why don't you first indicate to the jury where Nathaniel Parker Jr.'s apartment is at 414 11th Street?
414 11th Street right here.
And that particular apartment faces what street?
It faces north, which would be 11th Street.
Now, the select mark that you obtained video surveillance from as well, where is the select mark located?
623 14th Street.
And the street that runs to the east of the select mark, what street is that?
That's Jackson.
And the street that runs to the south of the select mark, what street is that?
14th Street.
Now, you also told the jury that you were able to obtain some video surveillance from Delperdana County. Where is that positioned on the map?
Be the yellow dot here, 607 14th Street.
Now, to help the jury understand the layout of the Delperdana County building and the select mark, the door to the select mark faces which street?
The door to the select mart faces south.
And so if it faces south, that's facing onto 14th Street, is that right?
That's correct.
And so the video surveillance that you would have obtained from videos from Delperdana County help the jury understand the positions of the cameras on that particular building that allowed you to kind of understand a timeline of events for that night.
There's exterior cameras around the whole building. The primary ones that we utilized to seize the front of Select Mart, which would be the south side facing 14th Street. We're on the east side of Delperdang, and I'm going to indicate with my finger once I walk away from the microwave, at least makes it a little clearer, the angle of those cameras.
And so you just indicated with your finger kind of where those cameras are positioned and the angle that they are facing. Is there video surveillance of the outside of the select?
The Select
Or the
Mart,
select mart itself?
No, they do not have any exterior cameras.
So the Select Mart video surveillance is only from the interior of their store.
That's correct.
And the Delaware County video surveillance was from the exterior of their building that showed you an angle of the front door of the Select Mart.
That's correct.
Now, there's another location that's indicated on this particular map as well. What is that location?
That location is 1521 Jones Street.
And how did this particular location become part of the investigation?
Through the investigation, we learned that after they left the individuals that left the Select Mart, they went to 1521 Jones Street for purposes of purchasing methamphetamine.
And so that's what's indicated there at 1521 Jones.
Yes,
And so then, as I understand from what you said earlier, the individuals that are involved, 4 of them leave Nathaniel Parker Jr.'s apartment. And who's driving when they leave?
when they leave the residence of Nathaniel Parker Jr., Conway Malone is driving.
And who's in the front passenger seat?
Nathaniel Parker Jr. is in the front passenger seat.
Who is in the rear passenger seat?
Jeffrey Lee,
And who is in the rear driver's seat?
the defendant, Nathaniel Parker III.
And at the Select Mart, that is when this particular car stops and William Harlan gets into the car.
That's correct.
And William Harlan is the 5th passenger of this particular vehicle. And as I understand it, he takes a seat between the defendant and Jeffrey Lee.
That's correct.
And so as William Parker is sitting in the back seat of that particular car, is the defendant on Jeffrey Lee's left or right side? Or is he on William Harlan's left or right side?
The defendant would be on the left side of the victim, William Harlan Jr.
And Jeffrey Lee would have been to the victim for Mr. Harlan's right side.
That's correct.
Officer Neary, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 12. You recognize State's Exhibit number 12?
Yes,
And what is State's Exhibit number 12?
video footage from Delaware County.
And have you reviewed this video surveillance prior to your testimony here this morning?
Yes, I have.
The state would offer State's Exhibit number 12 to evidence.
Any objection to 12?
No objection.
12 is admitted.
We'll hand you State's Exhibit number 8. You recognize State's Exhibit number 8?
Yes,
And what is State's Exhibit number 8?
this is video footage from inside of the Select Mart.
State would offer State's Exhibit number 8.
Any objection to 8?
No objection to 8.
8's admitted.
I'm going to offer you State's Exhibit number 95. You recognize State's Exhibit number 95.
Yes, this would be the apartment video from 414 11th Street.
And is that the entire video that was collected as part of your investigation?
Yes,
And then I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit number 3. You recognize State's Exhibit number 3.
yes.
And what is State's Exhibit number 3?
As same video, smaller time frame.
Are those the clips that we're talking about that you reviewed from the video? Taken without or taken from the full video of the apartment building?
Yes, those are the shorter clips that we had reviewed when we originally got to the police department prior to interviewing.
So the state would offer State's Exhibits 3 and 95 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
95 is admitted and 3 is admitted.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to begin to play portions of these video surveillance for the jury.
You want Elmo on first?
The video, please. Your
Okay,
Honor.
all right. See, I just saw you putting it up there, so hopefully that'll work here.
Officer, I'm going to begin the video surveillance with that of the Delperdane Accounting building located to the west of the Select Mart. Now, if we look at that map in State's Exhibit number 2, Officer Neas, is there an alleyway that runs between the Select Mart and Delperdane County?
Yes, there is. It's indicated on the map with green dots and says north-south alley.
I'm going to blow this up in just a moment, Officer Neas. But can you see kind of the vantage point that we're looking at here on this particular video from the Delperdane Accounting?
Yes, I can.
And the vantage point that we have, is that facing the front door of the Select Mart?
Yes, it is.
And up in the right-hand corner of this particular video, it indicates time of February 24th, 2023 at 8:00 p.m. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, were you able to determine when William Harlan got to the Select Mart on February 23rd or February 24th?
Yes,
You see this video.
yes, I was.
And so what time is it that Mr. Harlan arrives up to the Select Mart?
It would be 8:39.
And does he drive or does he walk?
He walks.
And what does he do generally once he gets to the Select Mart?
For the majority of the time that he is at the Select Mart, he is standing out front of the store, presumably panhandling.
I'm gonna move forward in time. It's indicated at 8:00 p.m. 20:00 is 8:00 p.m. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Loomis, just a second. Can you just, officer, if you could tell, what is, just for the sake of the jury and myself, what's the building up straight up at the top, sort of the right-hand side? Is that the Select Mart?
Yes,
Okay.
with the vehicle out front, that would be the Select Mart facing south.
Right. And is this a street or the alleyway that we're looking at?
This roadway here is an alleyway. It's the north-south alley indicated by green dots here.
Okay.
The camera angle is actually kind of on this southeast corner and it's facing northeast. So it catches the front of the store as well as the west side of the store.
Thank you. That was helpful. All right. Sorry, Mr. Loomis.
Nope, that's okay. That's just on my to-do list, Your Honor, but thank you. Okay.
And that helps when it gets larger as well, so.
So we're starting at 20:35:57 PM, which would be 8:35 and 57 seconds PM. Is that right, officer?
That is correct.
Okay, and my little arrow here that I'm using first will indicate where the select mart is right here that I'm kind of drawing a circle around.
That's correct.
Okay, and this is the front door area to the select mart,
Yes,
and this faces onto 14th Street.
yes,
And the alleyway that Judge was just referencing a moment ago runs to the west of the building
yes,
through here.
yes, that's correct.
So I'm going to begin playing the video surveillance. And I believe that you indicated in your testimony just a moment ago as we continue, as we're watching this first part, that William Harlan comes into view at the Select Mart at 8:39 PM. Is that right?
That's correct. Be indicated as 2039 on the camera.
And which direction will he be walking from as we're watching this video surveillance, Officer Neas?
He will be walking from the south. He actually crosses 14th Street, headed northeast towards the front of the store. I can indicate on the map. He comes from this alley on the south side of 14th Street. He walks across the street and walks towards the front door. So what you'll see in the video here shortly is him walking like this.
And so he's going to be coming from the bottom right corner of our TV screen.
Yes, where your cursor is now, approximately that area, and he will be walking towards the front of the store.
You take a break? No, okay. Can you pause it, Mr. Lewis? Yes, sir. We'll need to take a break. That's fine. Let's go ahead. We're just going to go ahead and take a break and we'll keep in mind the admonition I previously given you and we'll call you back in probably in about 10 minutes or so. That was just at the request of a juror. So, oh, yeah, that's what it was. So let's go ahead and stand down we'll go ahead and take our morning break now. So.
Was the clock like that yesterday too?
What's that?
Was the clock not working
Oh,
yesterday?
yeah, and we had it fixed and it's gotten worse.
Really?
Yeah. It was only about, well, I don't think it was 20 minutes. It was different yesterday when we had it fixed and now it's like forever wrong. What does that say? About 10 after 8? We're, we were, I think it was a worse battery and I think. Is what the end of it was. And so whatever, it must be on our battery, I don't know. Zero left these for me yesterday. So
That's nice of her.
I know it.
What are those? Clock wrap or candy?
The very first day, I got off and then I couldn't quit and I don't know what I just had a fracture in the throat or something.
I am squeeze my.
Sorry.
Right. Or right.
You want him out or?
I was gonna step out, but you guys have taken off.
Maybe scoot over here for me. Yep. Shuffle you.
Yeah.
Hang on a second.
Thank you.
Like, she knows. Took off, so you have to get a deputy to find us.
Okay. I'll call him if you want me to. Okay. Oh, I didn't know that he was leaving.
No, no worries. I think
Okay.
because after what you're kind of doing here, I'm thinking. My need for them has decreased.
Here, I don't know about that, I mean. He's not here there. I got Jay's phone number.
Well, I can call any of them. Leave it to me. Just tell me.
Strange looking at everything from the roof. What's that? It's strange looking at everything from the.
You're doing it. He is not sure. Yeah, Wes is here, so he's in the job. He's already here. Yes. All right. Still, yeah.
And it's funny, so they should walk outside. And then I'm gonna have.
That's.
Yeah.
All right, you want to check with Jill and see if they seem to be ready to go. I'm right. You can bring the public back in as long as Jill tells us. Right, you might always be seated, please. I think we're, based upon the testimony, close to the point in time when we believe Mr. Harlan's going to appear on this video, so that's where we interrupted. If you want to back it up a little bit, you certainly can.
No, that's okay, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'll just start where we left off at
Okay.
20:38 and 55 seconds, which is 8:38, 55 seconds PM. Officer Neas, there's an individual walking towards the Select Mart right now, carrying a bag in his right hand. Is that Mr. Harlan?
That is.
I'm going to pause the video at 20:40 and 0 seconds, which is 8:40 PM. And Mr. Harlan's out in front of the Select Mart. Officer Neas, is this where he remains for a period of time on this video surveillance?
Yes, he remains there in front of the store until 9 PM, or on the video would be 2100 hours.
And during this period of time, do you see him stay outside the store the whole time?
Yes,
And so he never goes in. Do you see any sort of disturbance, any sort of altercation, anything that would happen outside the front of the Select Mart from the time that William Harlan arrives until he moves from the front of the store?
no altercation or disturbance at all that took place.
And so as we watch the video surveillance, where does Mr. Harlan go when he's not in front of the Select Mart door at some point? You said at 9:00 PM.
At 9 PM, he walks around to the east side of the store. He goes out of view of the camera. He's also out of view of other camera angles. And then approximately 2 minutes later, he returns to the front of the store. He walks around to the east side of the store with his bag that he is carrying currently. He returns without the bag.
Did you attempt to locate the bag that Mr. Harlan was carrying that night as part of your investigation?
Yes, I did attempt to locate the bag.
Were you able to locate his bag?
No, we were not.
So I'm going to move ahead in time to just before 9:00 PM. Showing Mr. Harlan walking around from the front of the store to what would be the east side of the store with his bag. So it's at 20:59, 55, 8:59 and 55 seconds PM. And we'll begin here. Now, we just watched the video of Mr. Harlan coming out of view of the camera. Is that right, Officer Neas?
That's correct.
And you indicated that about 9:02 PM, he'll be returning from back around the front of the store.
Yes.
And is this William Harlan that we see coming back around the front of the store, Officer Neas?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to pause it here at 21:02 and 30 seconds at 9:02 and 30 seconds PM. Does William Harlan remain outside the front of the Select Mart after he comes back around?
Yes, he does.
And so what's the next event that we see take place in terms of what happens in the relationship between all the parties involved?
The next event is approximately 9:12. On the video, it'd be approximately 21:12. The vehicle, white Nissan Murano, enters the property and parks on the south side of the building.
And so from this period of time until the white Nissan Murano pulls into view, does William Harlan remain outside the Select Mart?
He remains outside the Select Mart in view of this specific camera on the south side of the building.
Did you see any disturbance, any altercation, any sort of fight? Not just involving Mr. Harlan, but by anyone outside the front of the Select Mart?
No, there was no disturbances or fights.
I'm going to move forward in time. (21:11:54). Enlarge the screen again, and Mr. Harlan is still out front. Is that right, Officer Neas?
That is correct.
And I'll play it at this point moving forward. Now we see a white vehicle pull into the top right portion of the screen, Officer Neas. Is that the white Nissan Murano?
Yes, the small SUV is the white Nissan Murano that is facing eastbound or Jackson Street with its brake lights currently on.
Officer Neas, we see an individual walking back behind of that white Nissan. Who is that individual that just enters the store?
Individual in the black coat and gray pants, walked behind the white Nissan and just entered the store was Jeffrey Lee.
Now, at this point in time, is William Harlan still outside the Select Mart?
Yes, he is.
And is this the white Nissan that's repositioning?
Yes, it is.
And the gas pumps of the Select Mart where the white Nissan is that just to the right? As we're
Yes.
looking at it?
It is just off the screen to the right. Should be consistent with the fill tank of this specific vehicle, therefore it had to reposition.
Now, is this Mr. Harlan that's approaching the white Nissan?
That's correct.
And he appears to go to the front passenger door,
That's correct.
and that would be where Nathaniel Parker Jr. was sitting.
That's correct.
Now William Harlan is walking back away from the Nissan and headed into the Select Mart at 21:16, 12 seconds or 9:16 p.m.
Correct. He was the third person that just walked in the door.
So if I pause it at 21:16 and 20 seconds, Mr. Harlan has entered the Select Mart. What does he do when he gets inside the Select Mart, Officer Neas?
Mr. Harlan goes back to the beer area of the store and selects some alcoholic beverages and goes to the register and purchases those beverages.
And that's what we'll see on the video surveillance from the Select Mart in a moment.
That's correct.
So I'm going to continue to play. Do you ever see Nathaniel Parker Jr. ever get out of the vehicle?
No,
Do you ever see the defendant, Nathaniel Parker III, ever get out of the vehicle?
no,
Does it appear to you that Conway Malone at some point gets out to pump gas for the car?
yes,
Now, there's two individuals that just left the Select Mart. Do you know either of those two individuals, Officer Neas?
yes, I do. The one in the lighter pants, dark coat, who is now entering the back seat of the vehicle is Jeffrey Lee.
And so at this point in time on the video, are all 4 passengers that arrived back inside the Nissan?
Yes,
Does the Nissan remain parked in this position for a little bit longer?
yes, a couple more minutes.
I'm gonna pause it at 21:18 and 33 seconds. Is this Mr. Harlan right here?
Yes, it is.
And is that Jeffrey Lee that just got out of the rear passenger side part of that vehicle?
Yes, it is.
So I'm gonna stop here at 21:19 and 29 seconds, or 9:19 and 29 seconds PM on the Delperdane video, and there are now 5 people in the Nissan. Is that right, Officer Nias?
That is correct.
I'm gonna hand you 2 photographs, State's Exhibits 13 and 14. Do you recognize these photographs?
Yes.
And what are they?
This is still shots from the video footage that we just watched.
I would offer State's Exhibits 13 and 14.
Any objection?
No objection.
13 and 14 are admitted.
Would you be able to switch to the Elmo when you have?
Ah,
a moment?
sure.
So State's Exhibit number 13. Just a still photo. At 21:18 and 30 seconds, or 9:18 PM. This is just right after William Harlan leaves the store and is standing out in front of the store. Is that right, Officer Nias?
That's correct.
When William Harlan was right there indicated,
Yes, that's correct.
then State's Exhibit number 14. At 21:19 and 3 seconds, or 9:19 PM. Mr. Harlan's by that white Nissan at that point in time.
That's correct.
So he had walked from the Select Mart over. So you continued to watch the video surveillance. Do you know the path of travel that the white Nissan would have taken after leaving the select mark?
Yes, I do.
And how were you able to determine that?
Through multiple angles of the Delberding accounting video.
And so using state's exhibit number 2, the map that we see, can you indicate to the point or indicate to the jury the path of travel that Conway would have driven as he leaves the select mark and where he's headed before you lose track of him off the video surveillance?
Yes, the vehicle is facing westbound as last seen in the video and is parked right here. This white box here is a previous overhang over the gas pumps. The vehicle leaves south to 14th Street, travels westbound on 14th Street, stops at the light here. There is a traffic signal here. The vehicle then travels northbound on Nebraska Street. The vehicle goes out of view of cameras approximately here. The vehicle does have its right turn signal on when it goes out of view. It's still traveling northbound, but does have its right turn signal on, indicating that it is about to turn right or eastbound. A short time after that, there is a camera angle that shows up this alley, and there is lights consistent with the time frame of a vehicle traveling eastbound. Undetermined at this point if the vehicle is traveling eastbound on 15th Street or 16th Street.
But that you believe that vehicle was eastbound towards the Jones Street residence, Officer Neary?
That's correct, not only from the video surveillance, but interviews and information we learned from the investigation. It is eastbound traveling towards that 1521 Jones Street, apartment number 2.
So let me switch out of this one, Officer Neary, and I want to now go to the select mark video surveillance.
Back to your computer, Mr. Loomis, just so you know.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So this would be state's exhibit number 8. And again, the video surveillance from the select mart is just from the inside of the store. Is that right, Officer Neary?
That's correct.
So the first clip that we're going to play is a combined clip of the front counter and cashier area. And we start at 21:14 and 02 seconds, or 9:14 p.m. Now this individual, I'm pausing at 9:14 and 13 seconds. Is that Jeffrey Lee?
That is Jeffrey Lee.
Here's as if Mr. Lee is prepaying for gas at this point in time, Officer Neary.
That's correct.
I'm gonna pause it at 21:16 and 17 seconds or 9:16 PM. Is this Mr. Harlan that we see walking in through the front door of the Select Mart?
Yes, he's
This
the one,
individual right here?
correct.
that I'm
He's wearing
circling.
the Shields Outfitters coat. He is, as previously seen on the exterior cameras, the third person in that stack of three people that enter the store.
Now, did Jeffrey Lee just leave the Select Mart at this point in time?
Correct. He was the one that left with the black and red flat bill hat.
And this is William Harlan back to the counter with the beer in his hand to purchase.
Correct.
We just saw Mr. Harlan leave the store. Now we're switching over to a view from behind the cashier counter. Beginning at 2103 seconds or 9 o'clock PM, 3 seconds. And at this point, I'm going to fast forward just a bit to the point that we see Mr. Lee come into the store. I'm going to start the video at 9:13 and 30 seconds or 21:13 and 30 seconds PM. And so we see Jeffrey Lee just come into the store. Is that right, officer?
That's correct.
And did we just see Mr. Harlan come into the store, Officer Neas?
That's correct.
Now, at this point, we have William Harlan back at the front counter register area of the store, Officer Neas.
Yes, that's correct.
Completed the first clip. This would be the second clip of the select mark. And is that William Harlan that we see walking back to the refrigerated area to buy the beer or to pick up the beer?
Yes, that's correct.
Officer Nielsen, and your state's exhibits 9, 10, and 11. You recognize those photographs?
Yes, these are three photos, still images from the video we just watched.
State would offer state's exhibits 9, 10, and 11.
Any objection?
No objection.
9, 10, and 11 are admitted.
State's exhibit number 9 at 21:16 and 17 seconds, or 9:16 PM would show William Harlan walking into the select mark. Officer Nias, is that right?
That is correct.
And state's exhibit number 10 at 21:17 and 45 seconds would show William Harlan at the counter to buy the beer. Is that right?
That's correct.
And state's exhibit number 11 at 21:18 and 15 seconds would show William Harlan just to have purchased the beer and is now headed out of the store. Is that right?
That is correct.
Now, you watched all the video surveillance that was obtained from Delperdane and the Select Mart. Is that right, Officer Neos?
That is correct.
Did you ever find any incident or anything on the video that would indicate to you that there was any sort of disturbance, fight, or altercation involving Mr. Harlan or anybody at the Select Mart on February 24th during this period of time?
No, there was not.
Did you have occasion to examine William Harlan's jacket during the course of your investigation?
Yes, I did.
Did you see the jacket after William Harlan had been stabbed?
Yes, I did.
Was there indication to you that on that jacket there were cuts in the fabric from where he had been stabbed?
Yes, multiple.
Now, if I show you state's exhibit number 87. Those three markings there would indicate different cuts within the fabric of his jacket.
Yes,
Now, those cuts that we see in state's exhibit number 87, those were photographs taken after William Harlan died. These still photos, clearly William Harlan is still alive. You see any sort of cut marks on that jacket at all, Officer Neas?
no,
Nothing to suggest to you watching these videos that William Harlan had been stabbed before he leaves the Select Mart on February 24th?
that is correct.
Did you find any evidence to indicate or suggest that he had been stabbed when he gets into the Nissan Murano when they pull out of the Select Mart?
No,
And so you indicated through previous testimony, Officer Neas, that after leaving the Select Mart, the path of travel is essentially to the west, to the north, and then last seen going back east towards the direction of the Jones Street residence. Is that right?
that is correct.
And as I understand it, that's the residence that these individuals were going because meth was going to be purchased at that particular house.
That's correct.
Showing you three photographs, states exhibits 84, 85, and 96. You recognize those photographs?
Yes,
Did you take those photographs?
yes, I did.
And these photographs depict what location?
As seen on the map, 1521 Jones Street. Both the front and rear of the residence. The rear of the residence off the alley is apartment number 2.
Now, this particular location, approximately how far away from the Select Mart is it?
About a block and a half to 2 blocks.
And if you were to estimate or were to estimate how long the drive would be from one spot to the next, what do you think it would be?
I would say under under a minute, under 30 seconds. Depending on the traffic light.
Now, the photographs taken of this particular residence, Officer Nias, clearly no snow on the ground, right?
Correct.
So these photographs were taken after the February 24th date.
Yes,
When did you take these photographs?
within the last month.
The state would offer states exhibits 84 and 96 into evidence.
No objection.
Oh, okay, I may be mistaken, but did you reference 85?
85 has already been offered and admitted, Your Honor. If not, I do it at this point.
I didn't have it written down. That's why I asked. So did you have any objection to 85 in case we missed it?
No, Your Honor.
So 84, 85, and 96
Thank you, Your
are
Honor.
admitted.
Officer Nias, I'm showing you state's exhibit number 96. Is it the 1521 Jones Street residence?
Yes, it is. This is the front side of the residence, which faces Jones Street. It also faces eastbound.
And show this photograph just to indicate the address of the residence we're referring to, Officer Nias. So if I go to state's exhibits 84. And 85. Does that depict the backside of that residence?
Yes, that is correct.
And the back door is the door I'm pointing to here with the storm door open.
Yes, that is apartment number 2.
And this is an alleyway that just runs back behind that particular residence that we see here.
Yes,
Now, for purposes of our timeline, after these 5 individuals leave this particular residence, where next do you pick them up arriving?
after, say that again.
Sure. After these individuals leave the Jones Street residence, where next does your video surveillance show them to?
I do see a vehicle traveling westbound on 14th Street. And then back to southbound on Pierce and ultimately arriving at the apartment complex 414 11th Street.
Now, what time do you have them arriving back at that 414 11th Street apartment complex area?
That would be 21:35 or 9:35,
So 9:35 p.m.
correct?
So as I understand it, at 9:19 p.m., they're all in the Nissan at the Select Mart.
Yes,
They go
all-
to the residence on Jones Street and end up back at the apartment at 9:35 p.m.
that's correct. All 5 parties leave the Select Mart as seen on video. All 5 parties arrive back at 414 11th Street at 9:35 p.m.
And so that's a 16-minute window of time that we're talking about. Is that right?
That's correct.
So at this point, I want to show you the video surveillance from the apartment complex, which is State's Exhibit number 3. And these particular clips that we're going to be looking at, Officer Nias, these were the initial clips that you obtained as part of your investigation.
Yes,
Now, the clips that we're going to be watching here momentarily, Officer Nias, do they have the timestamp and date on the clips?
no, they do not. And like previously said, they were the ones that I observed before interviewing and they did not have the timestamp on them.
But the entire video surveillance from Exhibit 95 that you later obtained, did that have the time stamp and date on it?
Yes, it did.
And is that how you were able to determine the time that the white Nissan arrived back at that apartment complex area?
Yes, I was.
And so when that vehicle arrives back, where is it going to be arriving and parking when we begin this video?
On the map here, the vehicle travels westbound on 11th Street, southbound in the alley, and parks right here, just south of the building for 1411th Street.
Now, this particular exhibit, these clips will run one right through the other. And so we'll watch these and we may pause them at different points in time, Officer Neas, but we'll begin going through the clips right now. And so we just started the clip. Is this the back alleyway or parking area to the apartment complex that we're talking about?
Yes, short time here, you'll see a vehicle traveling on from right to left on the screen. That is southbound in the alley. This parking lot with the van and the pickup is the parking lot that is just south of the apartment complex for 1411th Street.
I'm going to pause it right here, Officer Neas. Now, what we've seen up to this point is that William Harlan has been removed from the vehicle,
That's correct.
and you identified the defendant as the party that did that
I did.
and was tossed onto the ground.
That's correct.
And the verbal altercation that you indicated earlier in your testimony now going on between Jeffrey Lee and the defendant.
That's correct.
Pause it right here, Officer Nias. Now, the two individuals carrying Mr. Harlan would be Jeffrey Lee and the defendant. Is that right?
That is correct.
And if you watch carefully, there's some glimmers that we see as he's being carried from the pocket area of the defendant. Is that right?
That is correct.
Is that what you're referring to as the knife that this or sharp object that this defendant is carrying in his pocket?
Yes, that's correct.
And so where are they headed as we watch them go to the right of this screen off video?
They are headed towards 11th Street. They're actually northbound in the alley, and ultimately going to the front of this apartment complex.
Now, this individual that's back from the others, who is that?
That is Conway Malone. He's on the phone.
Now, did you confirm this phone call that he's making here?
I did. It was actually a phone call that he had received. He had received a call from the Dakota County Jail, which is not only recorded but timestamped.
And what time was that call?
I believe. Can I look at my notes quick?
Yes, if you need to, Officer News.
He receives the phone call at 21:35, or correction, 21:36, which would be 9:20 or 9:36, sorry.
We'll keep playing the video surveillance. We switch camera views. Is this them walking northbound to the front of the apartment building?
Yes, this is the camera that is in the alley. Kind of overlaps with the previous angle that we saw. But it is the three parties, now four parties walking northbound in the alley towards the front of the building, 414 11th Street.
And this is Conway Malone, we see.
Yes, that's Conway Malone on the phone as previously testified to.
And is this Conway Malone that we see headed back down, which would be south into that alley, back towards the back parking area?
Yes, Conway Malone heads back south in the alley. He ends up going back to the vehicle and repositioning the vehicle.
This view that we just switched to, Officer Nias, is this the front of the apartment complex?
This is the front of the apartment complex facing northwest. the street that you see in front of you is 11th Street, directly in front of the apartment complex, 414 11th Street.
And is that Nathaniel Parker Jr. unlocking the secure door to that apartment?
Yes, it is a secure door. Nathaniel Parker unlocks the door and holds the door for Jeffrey Lee and the defendant who are carrying the victim.
And is this Conway Malone that we see here?
That is correct.
Is this vantage point now the front door to the apartment complex with Nathaniel Parker Jr. opening up that door?
Yes, it is a stairway just inside that secure door. Daniel Parker opening the door. Jeffrey Lee and the defendant carrying the victim inside.
Now, this vantage point that we see, Officer Nias, that we just switched to, is this the hallway that runs for
Yes.
apartment number 6?
Yes, this is the bottom floor hallway. You'll see here shortly, the individuals enter from the left, which is the staircase, and they will go to an apartment on the right, which is apartment number 6.
Is that Nathaniel Parker Jr. just unlocking the door?
Yes, it is.
Now, is this Conway Malone that just enters into the apartment?
Yes, as previously watched, Conway Malone was not able to get into the apartment. He did reposition the vehicle onto 11th Street in front of the apartment. He then entered when another tenant was leaving.
And this is after William Harlan had been carried into the apartment.
Yes, the other parties have already entered apartment number 6 when Conway Malone enters the building.
And this is Conway Malone leaving at this point.
Yes, that is. He ends up getting in his vehicle and leaving the area.
So that was Conway Malone going up to apartment number 6. And then almost immediately leaving the apartment.
Yes, that was the same time frame as the last clip of the stairway. Enters the stairway, heads down to the apartment. He does make entry for a short period of time. He then leaves the apartment. This is his vehicle that it has been repositioned on 11th Street.
And is that Conway Malone leaving the apartment?
That's correct. He leaves the area.
And then the next point at which officers have contact with him is when the vehicle is stopped in the 50-minute block of Grandview.
Yes, when we learn through watching this video, the accurate description of the suspect vehicle, we were able to get that out to patrol officers. They made contact with him and the vehicle. That was our next contact with Mr. Malone.
I'm going to stop the video there, Officer Neas, and show you case exhibits 4, 5, 6, and 7. Recognize those photographs.
Yes, I do.
What are those photographs?
Those are still images from the video we just watched of the basement hallway just outside of Nathaniel Parker Jr.'s apartment number 6.
They were on page 4, 5, and 6.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
4 through 7 inclusive are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's exhibit number 4, still photo showing Nathaniel Parker Jr. at the door to his apartment. Is that right, Officer Neas?
That is correct.
States exhibit number 5, showing the defendant Jeffrey Lee and William Harlan in the hallway.
That's correct.
States exhibit number 6. A little further along in time from that video surveillance, again showing Jeffrey Lee, the defendant, and William Harlan.
That is correct.
You can see that the defendant's coat jacket appears to be unzipped. Is that right?
That's correct.
You see any sign of a red t-shirt being worn by this defendant?
I do not.
State's exhibit number 7. Again, a little further along in time, showing the defendant, Jeffrey Lee, carrying William Harlan.
That's correct.
With the sharp object sticking out of his pocket.
That's correct.
Do you believe that to be the knife that was found hidden in the bathroom tile?
Yes, I do.
Did you have an occasion to examine the knives that were recovered in this particular case?
Yes, I did.
The other knives that were recovered, let's review those quickly if we might. There was a knife that was recovered in the closet of apartment number 6. It was a folding knife. Do you recall that particular knife?
Yes, I do.
Did you examine that knife visually at all?
I did.
And in your opinion, was that knife involved in anything that took place on February 24th?
No, it was not.
Why do you say that?
Due to the fact that there was nothing visible on the knife, as well as the length and shape of the knife.
There was another knife that was found in the living room portion of apartment number 6. Are you familiar with that particular knife?
Yes, I am.
And that would be State's exhibit. Number 25.
That's correct.
Do you believe that this particular knife was involved on the night of February 24th?
No, I do not.
And why do you have that opinion?
Again, shape, as well as no visible evidence on, including blood on the knife. The knife is too wide to make the incisions that I observed while at the autopsy.
Now, there was a knife that was also located on Jeffrey Lee, is that right?
That is correct.
And in State's exhibit number 27, is that right?
There's a glare. Yes, that is the knife.
And you physically examined that knife as well.
Yes, I did.
You believe that knife was involved in anything that happened on the night of February 24th?
No, I do not.
And why not?
Again, because there was no visible blood on the knife. There was also the length of the knife is not consistent as well.
There was also a knife that was recovered in Conway Malone's car in the center console area of the car. Did you have occasion to review that knife as well?
Yes,
And that would be State's exhibit 26.
correct.
Do you believe that this knife was used at all on the night of February 24th of 2023?
No, I do not.
And why do you believe that's the case?
I was in plain view in the vehicle when I had located it myself with other officers. Has no visible blood on the knife. And the length is not consistent with the injuries observed at the autopsy.
Now, you indicated earlier that you had a chance and William Harlan code in State's exhibit number 28. You recognize this code?
Yes, I do.
Now, this kind of fabric in this code is a little interesting. You'd agree with me that this is a winter coat, right?
Yes,
And now this winter coat and shields, the shield outfitter since 1902 on the back. And that same logo is on the front left chest area. Is that right?
that is correct.
This jacket is waterproof.
Yes, it is.
And so if a jacket's waterproof, does it keep liquids off out of the jacket?
Yes, it would.
Would the reverse be true that it could also contain liquids within?
Your
Absolutely.
Honor, at this point, I would object that I don't believe this officer is a expert in clothing and or fabrics. He might be able to testify to his own experiences, but I don't think he should be allowed to be testifying as an expert as to what's waterproof, what holds water in, if this jacket is something that does that.
I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, may I?
You may attempt to establish foundation, but at this point in time, I don't think there's foundation yet, but you can ask more questions if you want.
Officer Neas, do you have experience with these kind of coats?
I have a Gore-Tex coat that does wick water.
And how long have you had that coat?
Prior to being in law enforcement, so upwards of 9 years.
And do you wear that jacket a lot?
I wear it when it rains.
And is this a similar kind of jacket to the one that you use in your own experience?
It is similar. It's actually the same brand.
And in your experience, Officer Neas, does this coat keep liquids off of you?
Yes, it does.
It's a waterproof jacket.
Yes.
And again, I go back to the same question that I asked before. In your experience, would it also hold in as well as keep off?
Yes, it would.
And finally, Officer Neas, I may ask you about State's Exhibit number 23. State's Exhibit number 23 is just the knife that's located in the bathroom,
Yes, it is.
located in the ceiling tile of that bathroom.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, in your opinion, do you believe that this knife was involved in what happened on the night of February 24th?
Yes, I
Your
do.
Honor, I would object to that question. He is not a doctor. He is not trained in any type of forensic analysis of weapons. He is not the person to ask if this is the weapon to have made certain injuries, Your Honor. We already had a doctor do that.
Overruled. He may answer the question.
Yes, I do believe it was the weapon used.
Okay, and what's your reasoning, or why is your opinion that?
There are multiple things that we look at in an investigation. Location of the knife or where it was located was in a small efficiency apartment in the bathroom. Along with in that bathroom, the defendant was located by law enforcement as well. The weapon was wrapped in a t-shirt. The weapon had visible blood on it. The weapon, we later learned, did have human blood on it. The weapon was wrapped in a t-shirt. That t-shirt had blood on it as well. That same t-shirt did come back to having William Harlan's blood. The defendant was seen carrying a very similar knife into the vehicle or into the residence. In addition, I attended the autopsy and observed the depth of the wound and location of the wound. I observed these knives and examined all of these knives after the autopsy and determined that this one would be the most consistent, which was later followed up by DNA testing.
As part of the investigation, Officer Neas, you indicated early in your testimony that interviews were conducted of individuals at the station. That included the defendant, Nathaniel Parker Jr., Jeffrey Lee, and eventually Conway when he arrived. Is that right?
That's correct.
How would you describe the level of cooperation provided by Conway Malone to this investigation?
Very low level of cooperation, not only the night of, but followed up on March 3rd when we conducted sworn statements, and actually locating him to conduct those sworn statements. He was difficult to find. He did not show up when he was supposed to, and we had to go find him.
And what about that of Nathaniel Parker Jr., the defendant's father? How would you describe or characterize his level of cooperation with this investigation?
His level of cooperation was even less than Mr. Malone. Again, we had to go find him as well for sworn statements. He was verbally upset during both the night of and the sworn statements and not cooperative with law enforcement.
The person that you arrested for involvement in this particular incident, Officer Neas, do you see him here in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify him for the jury, please?
The defendant, Nathaniel Parker III.
And all the events that took place on February 24th of 2023 that you investigated, Officer Neas, did they take place here in Woodbury County, Iowa?
Yes, they did.
The state has no further questions for this witness at this time.
Mr. Lewis, we'll begin cross-examination and we'll for about 10 minutes and then we'll take our lunch break. So.
Oh, certainly. Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, what is your educational background?
I've completed my high school diploma. I have a 4-year degree in criminal justice from the University of South Dakota. I also have graduated from the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. I have training and experience through the police department in interviews, homicide investigations, technical crash scene investigations, arson investigations.
In your bachelor's, in your college career, did you have a major in biology,
I did not.
minor in biology?
No, I did not.
Now, of the knives that you observed, how many of those knives had a side that was sharp and a side that was dull or flat?
Multiple knives.
The knife that you believe Mr. Parker III was holding, is that knife sharp on both edges?
It does have sharp points on both edges.
And so if you observed the autopsy, then you're aware that when the actual medical doctor manipulated the wound, they came back to a flat side and a pointed side. Correct?
Objection, that misrepresents or mischaracterizes the evidence or the testimony of Dr. Thompson.
I believe it may. I'm not certain that I recall it correctly, but we'll let the jury decide on that. But of course, Mr. Loomis, if you have the information that you wish to show this detective when we're in a redirect, I'll let you do that, of course. So I
Thank you.
understand that's an arguing point, but I don't recall specifically if that's what the doctor's, the pathologist's testimony was. Seem to recall it correctly as you do, Mr. Loomis, but we'll go ahead and continue.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Could you maybe read that back? I might have forgot what I actually said.
Thank you.
Question, and so if you observed the autopsy, then you're aware that when the actual medical doctor manipulated the wound, they came back to a flat side and a pointed side.
Yes, there was manipulation by the doctor. There were some wounds that I recall that had pointed side on both. There was also wounds that had pointed and a flat side.
Were you present when, as the doctor labeled those wounds?
Yes,
So are you aware which wound the doctor believed was the wound that caused the death of Mr. Hart?
yes, I am.
Okay, would that be wound C?
That's correct.
And when the doctor manipulated that wound, what observation did you recall the doctor had?
I recall that it wasn't a clean incision or cut mark. There had been some almost like tails off of it, like it had torn or something.
Okay, so you don't recall if he on that wound found it to have a sharp side and a flatter side.
I don't recall specifically that wound.
Okay. All right. Now. Now, from the video you observed, was Mr. Parker holding Mr. Harlan like this?
Just to clarify, Nathaniel Parker III, correct?
Correct.
Yes, it did appear that he was carrying him kind of an underhook behind him.
And it's also was clear from the video that his coat was open.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, was the body of Mr. Harlan in front of him, so it's hard to see?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Now, any of the people that you were interviewing on this night, did any of them smell of alcohol, things of that nature?
I do recall there being odor of alcohol.
Do you recall from which people you interviewed?
Yes, Jeffrey Lee did have odor of alcohol coming from him. And I don't recall if Mr. Malone did or not.
Okay. Now, in your investigation, were you able to determine where Mr. Harlan lived?
Yes, Mr. Harlan, the victim, correct?
Yes, sir.
He was a transient. In other words, he did not have a place of residence. He lived on the streets or where he could find a place to sleep.
Okay. And so he had a bag of something at one point.
Yes, when he entered the video on Select Mart, he did have a bag.
But that bag was gone? Is that
That's
right?
correct.
Do you know what happened to that bag?
No, I do not.
Do you know if Mr. Harlan was robbed of that bag?
No, I do not.
Now, you were able to look at the video and determine who some people were, is that right?
That is correct.
Around the time of the 9 o'clock hour, were you able to go and look at those videos inside the Select Mart to see who those people were?
As far as like the time frame that the victim was on the property, correct?
Correct, sir.
Yeah, I observed camera footage throughout that day, yeah. Or that evening, sorry, inside and out, yeah.
All right.
Yes.
And so were you ever able to identify anyone or talk to anyone to get any testimony about what was going on around that time?
Inside the store?
Inside, outside, just any other people?
No.
And you did send someone back to look for Mr. Harlan's bag, is that right?
Yes, we did.
Do you recall about when that was?
I don't know. It was during the investigation.
Okay, would it have been that same day, next day?
It would have been within 24 hours. I don't know exactly when. We were here from that time getting called in well into the evening of the following day.
Okay, now, Were you the person that was in charge of the video for the select mark?
Yes,
Yeah, you, maybe I'm probably phrasing that wrong. Let me rephrase that. Did you take the video?
I collected the video.
I'm thinking more of it as in the actual process of taking a picture, of taking that video in the select mark.
I guess I don't understand the question. I did not
It
take-
wasn't your camera. You weren't standing in the select mark at the time.
Of the evening?
Correct.
No, I was not.
Okay. So have you ever had an occasion where you tried to take pictures and it doesn't quite show everything correctly, at least as it looks to your naked eye?
Yeah.
All right. So you yourself never saw what Mr. Harland looked like, or what the jacket looked like when he was at the Select Mart in person.
I did not see him in person at the select barn. Correct.
So you're relying on how good the photographs are.
The video, yes.
All right. Now, this evening would you consider this a cold evening?
Yeah, it was pretty cold.
And you said Mr. Harlan is transient or was transient?
Yes,
Okay. And when did he get to the Select Mart?
we first see him walking onto the property at about 8:39. Yeah, I believe it was 8:39.
Do you know where he was before?
I know he came from the abandoned north-south alley in the 1300 block between Nebraska and Jackson. I don't know prior to that.
All right, but at least when he was in the alley, he was still outdoors.
I'm sorry, still.
Outdoors.
Yes,
So are you aware, do you have any inkling of how long he had been outside that day?
the only way that I would know, or what I would know, is what we seen on the video from that 2039 timeframe to the timeframe he would have got or entered the store. I can say for sure he was outside.
All right, now, I believe you talked about watching a lot of videos in this case.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, were you the lead detective? Are you the lead detective in this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And so in any of these, at any time, did you ever see anyone stab Mr. Harlan?
No, I did not.
And you, I guess for lack of better, believe it happened in the white Nissan Mirai.
That's correct.
What blood did you find in your investigation inside the white Nissan Mirai?
There was some blood that was located on the B pillar, the passenger side of the vehicle on the inside.
And what was the blood that was located on the pillar? What was that consistent?
The victim's blood.
But could you tell me how it looked on that pillar?
It was like a drop.
Okay.
Like if someone were to I don't know how to describe it. They drop off of like a dropper if it were to hit the pillar.
So would you say it was minimal
It was minimal.
or almost non-existent?
I wouldn't say non-existent, but definitely minimal.
Oh, okay. Now, would you expect in your training, from your training, that if if someone was stabbed multiple times inside a small confined area, that there should have been other amounts of blood.
Not necessarily, from my experience, contrary to popular belief, stab wounds don't necessarily create a lot of blood. Specifically in this incident, the chest cavity would have had to fill up with blood before any blood were to exit the wound.
And what leads you to believe that cuts don't bleed?
I'm not saying they don't bleed, I'm just saying it's not a large amount that you would see.
So there should be blood from a cut,
Yes,
but we just don't have any in this car.
I would say that's not factual.
Okay, we have a drop.
Correct.
Is there a hand smudge, some other type of smudge in the vehicle?
No, not that I know of.
All right. Now, would people in a small SUV like that, do you think someone should have noticed if someone was being stabbed?
Yes, I do.
Now, you realize that one of the stab wounds, and if that knife is the correct knife, two of the stab wounds from the doctor's perspective go up and down. You're aware of that, right?
Yes,
And so in this small SUV, you believe that long knife went up and down into Mr. Hart.
I do.
And so you probably also believe other people knew that Mr. Harlan was stabbed.
Yes, I do.
And so now you have the video there, right? Of the people coming back to the apartment.
Sorry.
They took him back there
Correct.
where they know there's video,
I didn't hear that. Say that again.
where they know there's video.
I don't know if they knew there was video, but there
Are the
was
cameras
video.
right in the hallway.
Yeah,
And so they then carry him into the apartment. Right?
correct.
And then what time roughly do they carry him into the apartment?
The time that they enter the apartment, I believe, was 9:38, something around that time frame.
Okay. And
Mr. Loomis, find a point where you want to take a pause.
maybe just a couple
Okay,
more
that's
questions.
fine. Sure.
Okay, so I'm sorry, what was that time?
I believe it was around 9:38
Okay,
PM.
9:38. Do you recall when the 911 call was made?
Yes, it was 9:47.
Okay. So what do we got? 9 minutes?
Correct.
How many people ran out of that room?
When?
Out of Nathan Parker Jr.'s apartment?
From the time that they entered to the time law enforcement made contact?
Anytime?
Nobody had exited.
No, I
But-
said ran. How many people ran from there?
Ran.
Yes.
I don't know of anybody running from the apartment.
Now, Mr. Malone, he seemed pretty casual in wandering back and forth with his phone call. Did he look like he was in a hurry?
No,
Did he look like he was concerned that somebody had just been stabbed in his car?
no,
Did Mr. Parker III leave?
no, I did not.
So he just stayed and waited for you.
He was in the bathroom with the light off with the door shut of
So
the
he
same
didn't leave.
apartment, correct?
Didn't leave.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh, he didn't leave,
He did not leave.
so we stayed and waited.
That's correct.
I think that's a good.
Okay,
Good place.
so we'll take our pause now. Neglected to mention to you, after you left yesterday, defendants offered a weather report for February 24, 2023, and it was admitted on the record yesterday, but it's exhibit 103. And it's a weather report, so it gives, I think, an hour by hour or at least increments of temperature for that day or in that 24-hour time period. So that will be in the evidence, but we'll let you go for lunch. Let's come back at 1:15. All rise, the jury is excused for lunch.